Hey guys, Project Car Palooza, we got another EG project car. This one's going to be a little bit different than the one Aaron's doing right now. This particular car, we're going to try and do a K-swap in it as cheaply as we can. Now, admittedly, with this car, the easiest swap is a B-Series swap. In fact, by far, it's the most popular swap. You see B-Series swap EGs everywhere. But the K-Series is actually gaining more and more ground on the B-Series swap. Those things are all over the place. The K-Series, you find them in junkyards now. They came in Accord, Element, CR-V, and of course the RSX and the Civic Si. Now, what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and do a swap and try to do it for under $3,000. So $3,000, that's kind of the typical cost of a B-Series swap. Not totally. I mean, if you do like a Type R, it's going to be a little more expensive. If you do a non-VTEC motor, it's going to be a little less expensive, but that's why we chose $3,000 for our budget on this K-swap. Now, the biggest expense in the K-swap is the engine, transmission, and computer. So what we decided to do is we're actually using an Accord engine. The Accord engines you can find online for about $400, $450. The transmissions are all over the place for $250 to $350. And for the computer, we're actually using a modified Accord ECU. Those can be had for about, $35 to $50. And K-Tuner does modifications so that that computer is tunable. Now, for the engine harness, what we decided to use was an Element harness. The Honda Element harness is the least expensive of all the K-Series harnesses. It's kind of weird. It's pinned out a little bit differently because obviously it's for an Accord motor and Accord ECU, but also the C101 plug, the plug that interfaces between the car and the engine harness, it's like mirror image of the RSX harness. So you're going to have to do a little bit of, we used the Hassport adapter harness, so we had to do a little modification to that in order to get it to work. We also had to repin the E-plug on the adapter harness so it'd be more compatible with the Accord ECU. Some of the other wiring differences we did, instead of getting a charge harness, which a lot of people buy, which costs you $100, we decided just to take and extend the wires that would be in the charge harness that go to the alternator and to the NOx sensor and just put them straight onto the regular engine harness. Then we took the alternator charge wire and the starter wire and we took those completely out of the harness. Those normally would be in the charge harness as well. So we took the stock EG positive battery cable harness and we just made a couple of extensions. We extended the wire over to the starter. We had to lengthen it a couple of feet. And then we also took the harness that was originally inside the EG and we stripped out the alternator wire and we made that go from the alternator on our K-Series over to the fuse box where it needed to go. The NOx sensor plug is pretty unique, and depending on which NOx sensor you have, like the Accord one, you can actually just call up Rywire at rywire.com and you can order from him the connector with a short piece of wire on it. We had him send us a piece with about a 15-inch section of wire on it. We were able to just splice it right into our engine harness and it worked out perfectly. Some of the other choices in order to keep the price down, DC Sports ceramic header, less expensive than the stainless steel ones. And we went ahead and used a stock Accord clutch. Sometimes if you're lucky, you can buy the engine with the Accord clutch and flywheel still on it. They're a little bit heavier and a little less desirable than the ones from the RSX Type S. So we opted to use that one. We were able to find better prices on new parts for that. Also, we had to modify the engine with the CR-V bracket that bolts on here over on the time belt side. This works with the Hassport motor mount kit that we're using, so we needed to buy that as well. Also the idler pulley. Since we're not having power steering on our EG, and we could have, but as part of the budget, we didn't want to have that extra expense of making hoses. So we bought the idler pulley for the EP3 car. Another part we needed was also the intermediate shaft. I was able to buy 3 of them for 50 bucks each. Typically, they're going to be about $50 to $75. Anything from a Civic with a K-Series in it will work, except for the new 2012 Up Civics or the RSX with a manual transmission. All those intermediate shafts will work perfectly with this motor. Can't use the Accord one, it's a little bit long. Although, we could probably make a custom axle for you. Why don't you give Hassport a call and see if they'll make a custom axle if you decide you want to use the Accord intermediate shaft. Now, all the part numbers for these things, like the bracket and the pulley, we'll put those part numbers below our YouTube, the description, or you can go to VTEC or VTECacademy.com, and you can download a list from there. So we'll have all those part numbers for you. In order to try and keep with our budget, we made a few other decisions on this car. First off, we decided to go with rubber fuel lines rather than the AN lines and braided lines that everybody goes with. So in order to do that, I took the stock fuel line right here and stripped off the metal piece so I could screw our high pressure line straight to it. I didn't scrimp on the fuel pressure regulator though. I used an AEM unit, which I got used for a pretty good price. But it's still, you don't want to scrimp on fuel pressure regulators because that could cause damage to your engine if you get a bad one or a cheap one. Now, in order to be able to use the quick disconnects, stock quick disconnects, I actually took a cut line that had come with the motor and I split apart the plastic and pulled out the small metal quick disconnect part. And that was basically hose clamped onto our rubber hose, and it works really slick. Another thing we did is on our clutch line. I went down and purchased a 20-inch metric brake line from Napa Auto Parts, and I bent a custom clutch line. That way I was avoiding the $125 line that everybody makes that goes all the way from your clutch master cylinder all the way to the slave cylinder. This was a much less expensive choice, and I was then able to use the stock hard lines to do the rest of the connection, and that actually had come with my transmission. For the mount kit, we decided to go with a Hasport mount kit. One of the reasons, of course, is because I work for Hasport, but also this allowed us to use the Accord transmission, which was a lot less expensive. The shifter cables are from the Accord. They're less than half the price of the RSX Type S shifter cables. This is one of the reasons we decided to go with the Accord transmission, because we could use those shifter cables. At some point, if I get a craving for a 6-speed, what I'll probably do is sell off this transmission and buy a TSX 6-speed. I'm not going to probably be racing this car a lot, so it's not important to me that I have nice close ratios like the SI does. This is going to be more of a street car. The advantage of the dual height mounts is it keeps the head in the same place. What that means is if you want hood clearance, you can mount the K24 at the lower position and then it won't interfere with the hood. Actually, I prefer ground clearance, so I'm going to mount it up higher where you normally would mount a K20. If you notice here, we've actually cut out some of the hood structure in order to make clearance for the head. If I wanted to run power steering, I would mount it at the lower position. That gives me room for the power steering pump and also gives me clearance for the hood. For the radiator, we decided to go ahead and stick with the stock radiator. We already owned it. We didn't have to buy a new one. In order to make it fit, we have to move it over to the other side. That process was actually pretty simple. What we did was we cut off the mounting tab that was on this side over here. Then we moved the radiator over, put the right post in, which would have been the left post hole. Once we did that, we moved the tab over and welded it in place so that it fit well, made the radiator nice and level. Now that allows us to get access to the outlets for the radiator. We can hook them up to the motor.
A couple things about this intake. Obviously there's no short ram intake for the Accord because the air box is over here on the Accord, and you know this engine doesn't typically go inside here. Another thing, the intake air temp sensor is on the intake air tube, actually starting in 96 out, but of course it's on the Accord. One of the things I did to save money was I grabbed an intake air temp sensor for a 96 Civic, which was much less expensive as an aftermarket part in part stores. I actually got this out of the salvage yard, so it cost me like $2. And then I took the plug that goes on that and spliced it onto the harness instead of using the stock one, which I didn't get with the engine or the harness. So I changed it to save a few bucks.
Let's burn this candle.
Okay, we got it running, ready for a test drive. I'm kind of curious to see if we made our $3,000 price point. It would be really slick if we could do a K-Series swap for the price of a B-Series swap. Anyway, our next goal with the car is to try to get 200 horsepower, try to get Type S power out of our inexpensive swap. I wonder what kind of modifications that's going to require.
Okay guys, time for the moment of truth. We've done our K24 swap and we've kept a nice list of every part we use and the price. We totaled it all up. Remember, our goal here is to do it for under $3,000. $3,000 is kind of the typical price of a B16 swap, kind of do-it-yourself B16 swap. Anyway, our grand total is $3,285. That's a little bit more than I wanted to spend. I was really hoping to keep it under $3,000, but there are a lot of parts involved in this swap, so I think we really did well anyway. And I still think of this as a win. I mean, think about it. The B16 is about 160 horsepower. The K24, which is also 160 horsepower, has a lot more torque. I think this car is going to just eat up B16 swap Civics. In fact, I think it'll eat up B18C swap Civics. So what I'd really like to do is get Aaron out with his B18C powered EG and do a little testing with him and see which car is faster. So maybe we can do that in an upcoming video. Anyway, if you're interested in more details about our swap list and our parts, go ahead and head over to VTEC Academy and check out. I'm going to be building a series of articles that's going to go and outline every one of the parts we use and how we use them. And on top of that, I'll also give you some alternative parts and their prices as well. So go ahead and check that out if you don't mind. Now, last but not least, I really want to take this car for a test drive, so I think we need to do that next.
Hey guys, I'm here with Budget EG. We're at Exact Dyno in Tempe, Tim Kelly Tuner, and I got with me James from K-Tuner. James, come on over. As you remember, part of our budget build was to use a K-Tuner ECU with the reflash. We were using an Element engine harness and an 05 Accord ECU with K-Tuner reflash. Now, stock this motor makes about 160 horsepower. We've got relatively simple mods. We just have a cold air, well, not really. We've got a hot air intake that's up above the transmission, and we have a DC Sports swap header. So I'm kind of curious to see what it makes on the base tune. You've actually tuned one of these somewhere else, haven't you?
Yeah, our dealer Turbo Jixer Tuning actually tuned this in Florida. Picked up 12 to 13 horsepower.
Wow, that was on an Accord?
Yep, don't stop.
That's significant. Okay, cool. Well, our results may vary. This obviously is Arizona, June, so what, it's going to be 115-ish today. And we also have a catalytic converter on here because I do want to get this through emissions. Anyway, we're going to dyno it, see what it does. Horsepower with 157 foot-pounds of torque. Not bad for a 160 horsepower motor. All right, this is take two with the reflash. We did 158, 159 horsepower on the first two poles. Sure, see what it does now. What changes are you going to make?
Cam angle.
Just cam angle? actually prolonged our horsepower quite a bit and really fattened up the torque curve. So we wound up with, start off 158 horsepower on base tune. After Tim did his tune, we got 168 horsepower, so we picked up a little more than 10 horsepower. That was awesome, very good. So I want to know where we want to go next with this thing. Obviously we've got some parts that I can throw on it. Obviously I have a bell mount for the intake air tube. I've got a different header, big tube header. I've got 2 different manifolds. I got like the 06 Civic SI one. I also have the TSX one, which has bigger runners,
bigger plenum.
And a big, okay, so on your setup, how much horsepower did you make?
So I had the exact same setup, all 05 Accord, clutch, tranny, all of it, and I had cold air intake that I just handmade, like Brian's thinking about doing, and then K-tuned budget header and a 2.5-inch exhaust. So you could do that and then just put the cat under the car, like they would have done stock, and then you'll still be legal, but you get the benefit of the header. And that header was the best header we found for this engine.
Okay.
I think 10, 12 horsepower all by itself.
Wow. And that could very well be because of the lower RPMs it's running than some of the other things.
Exactly.
So the big tube may not do...
I think the big tube is
too much.
much.
Okay. Yeah. Might be too much. Okay. Very good. So the other thing is VTC. Do you think I'll pick up anything with the VTC modification?
I have it running to its limit right now, 25, and it likes that, and then it runs back, it's at 0 by 4,500 or 5,000.
Oh, so not likely to pick up anything up top.
Considering we've got almost 168 torque at 3,000, I don't know that advancing it more will do anything.
Okay. It might with different cams. I mean, I have some skunk cams and I have some flower cams. So if I put those in, having the different VTC might help.
Then it might work.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do the basic stuff. Let me do, we'll just try a different header, and I'll do some stuff with the intake. I'll change to the TSX intake with the bigger plenum and runners, and then I'll also, and then the cold air intake. Obviously, mine up there in the heat is going to be a big problem out on the road.
Yeah.
Okay, and what was the air temps you saw?
Even on the dyno where it's hot, where it's 90 degrees in the shop, but I was seeing 110 to 115 intake air temps.
So radiator air was getting blown back onto the thing, so it's going to be way worse on the thing. So I'll do a cold air intake. I'll put a bell mount one just for shits and grits. Anyway, so we got a few things we're going to try. We'll do that, and then I want to do cams after that. And hopefully we can get to our goal of 200 horsepower.
All right.
Yeah, very good. I really want to try to get Type S horsepower out of this thing. We've already got better Type S.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, all right, cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, James. Yeah, here we are in Tucson at Musselman Honda Circuit. It's a little go-kart track that they actually do a lot of time attacks on. It's actually really wide, about 30 to 40 feet wide in different areas. This is our first ever shootout. We're doing the Budget K versus Aaron's EG, which is B18C powered.
Yes. B power versus K power.
Oh man, I should wear my shirt.
Yeah, see? It's called fourth line. Plan this out. But really, it's going to be so easy because the B series does have 20 more horsepower at least.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, okay, it's a really technical track. So it might not help it out very much.
Kind of tight. And actually, I think torque is probably going to be a better advantage than horsepower.
Also, cooling might be. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll check it out later.
Okay.
It's pretty hot out here.
It is.
It's about what, 109?
Yeah. It's supposed to be a 1 and 11 for the high.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet.
Yeah, it's cooler down here in Tucson instead of Phoenix where it's really hot.
Yeah, it's like 112 up there.
But yeah, so this is a really good comparo. We're gonna see the Budget K, which is about $3,000, and actually my swap was actually more expensive when it happened. Nowadays it's cheaper, but when it happened, my swap was around 4,000, something like that. So
yep,
that shows you how long I've had that swap in there. But there's no better car,
and
no better engine than the one you already have, unless you got like a D15 or something lame.
What we'll be doing is doing a few hot laps around the track here, seeing whose car's faster, I think we're going to probably wind up switching cars at some point so that we can take each other's car out, and that way it'll eliminate the driver as the advantage. You've had a track day or two, haven't you?
I've had one track day, and yeah, and I spun out at PIR, so that tells you how good that went. Wait, need a helmet.
Helmet would be good. What do you think of this track?
I like it once I figure out where the heck I'm going, because I get to where I think I know where I'm going, and I'll go for it, hit the throttle, and then I'll be like, oh, I'm turning the other way. My bad.
Yeah, it's a lot of rights and lefts out here.
So you're saying the driver component will be eliminated when we switch cars?
When we switch cars.
You're not going to sandbag in my car?
I might if it's close.
At least he's honest.
I think it'll be a pretty decent matchup.
My car's naked on the inside. You have full interior.
I have full interior.
I'm on 15s. You're on.
I'm actually on 13s, but you're on a Hoosier.
But you keep them clean.
Yeah, you're on a Hoosier, and I'm on an Advan. So
if I was a better driver, I'd mop the floor with you with those tires.
Yeah, it probably would. And you're not really on a road course setup. You're kind of square on your camber all the way around. You can probably pick up a little more corner speed with a little bit of camber dialed in here and there. I'm not either, The only camber I have is from lowering the car, so it's not like it's all scientific and everything.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have the advantage on the suspension. Because I have the Progress CS2 coilovers and the Progress rear sway and bar brace, which I can kind of tell already it doesn't understeer as much as it used to. My
setup is 15-year-old Tokiko HPs and generic coilovers.
That's a ticket.
And it's the same way it was when we bought the car. I did check the toe the other day, and it drove super straight on everywhere, and we found it was because it was like towed in about 1/8 inch on the front. So we towed it out slightly to help with turning a little bit, but that's it. That's my my track setup.
Let's do some laps and see how it goes.
Let's do some laps.
Yeah. Be serious.
Switch to I'm going to put AC on it.
Oh, okay.
So I'll switch to a full-size radiator and a full-size condenser, because in Arizona the half-size radiators when it's 115 degrees out just does not do a very good job of cooling, and I'm pretty certain that the RSX AC compressor is going to want something a little bit bigger than the little half-size one that comes normally on an EG. So it'll be a double bonus. I'll get a full-size radiator for cooling.
Oh, is it leaking?
Is that the problem?
I think it's leaking. Where's it going?
Well, maybe going back into the engine, because it may have emptied out the engine. Well, if you want to follow
All right, so I went around the track for the first time, kind of trying to figure out where it goes, and I was supposed to follow Brian, but for some reason he took off. It left me to fend for myself. I think that's a little bit of strategery on his part. But anyway, my car felt pretty good. Like, I didn't flog it. Your first time on the track, and especially at a place you haven't driven, you don't want to go as hard as you can, because you can screw it up real easily. So yeah, I think it did pretty well, and just a little bit of rubbing in the back on the tire. Nothing too bad. Doesn't look like it's going to cause any problems. And I can tell you how my temps are doing in this hot weather, but the temperature gauge is broken in this car. Well, the gauge works. There's no needle, so I guess that's a problem for me. Coyote's back.
Still not as loose in the back as I'd like it to be, but it's fine. Didn't spit up anything this time. That's good. And felt pretty quick. I mean, probably 106 maybe, which is not horrible. We'll see what happens.
Sounds like it's gonna. That's pretty good time.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. They'll post them up in a little while. You ready to go out?
Yep.
All right. Not much of a battle.
Oh, it wasn't so bad. I think I did all right for the first time at this track.
Yeah, we're not going to really be able to switch cars. I think we'll have to figure out how to do that some other time. I found a few huge problems with this car, by the way. First of all, the $15 brake pads I bought, they fade with 2 hard laps.
Who knew?
Yeah.
I thought all the racers used $50 brake pads.
Right. So I'll probably move up to like a $30 brake pad. Well, anyway, I'm gonna get some real brake pads and some real rotors. The other problem was this small radiator in this Arizona heat.
No bueno?
No bueno. Your car didn't have a problem.
Well, it's because I have that dual core, Del Slow radiator, so.
Yeah, the dual core may be the difference.
It's that O'Reilly special. If you don't want your stuff to overheat, and also, I mean, honestly, you were going way harder than I was. I rode with him, and he goes harder down the straight, brakes way later, turns in way harder, and is just ringing it out, where I'm just learning this track and I'm learning these tires and I'm not going anywhere as hard as him. But I think the radiator, yours is only a single core.
Yeah, single core.
CX
radiator.
Stock CX radiator. So
we're gonna have to upgrade the radiator for next time.
So if you got a K series with CX, you
upgrade them. Upgrade that radiator. You know, it's okay for driving around town, but if I had an AC on this thing, I don't think it'd work very well. But you know, for just driving around, I think it's been fine.
Oh, wait to talk about our lap times.
Oh yeah.
I mean, technically, Budget K was quicker around the circuit.
Yes.
So technically, I guess you might have won this round.
I'll tell you what. Before we next weekend, I'll bring both these cars down the drag strip, and we'll do a drag race.
Uh-oh, we're gonna break some axles.
No broken axles. I've been racing V6s, not broken axles. I'll be fine. Well, we're not on slicks. We'll be fine.
All right.
And we'll see which car actually is faster, not who's driving harder.
I have a feeling that the VTEC is faster.
The torque,
on the
man.
drag strip?
The torque.
But at the top end, you got Mad VTEC. You're on the big cam.
I guess we'll see.
That's why we switched to B series like in the early or late 90s.
Then why do we switch to K?
No, but we were beating cars with bigger displacement and more torque with higher horsepower B series.
But they weren't made by Honda.
True. That might be
That could be the determining factor here.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm going to bring these two cars to the drag strip, and we'll settle the question: which one's faster?
Probably B series. B series.
K is the way.
I have no clue what I'm looking at. It just says IBOC, so you know it's going to be good. So Budget EG became not so budget a little while ago, going to FF Battle. We ended up with very expensive team coilovers that just weren't fitting with the style of the car. So to get back to the budget, we have got an all-new IBOC Sportline kit, which includes the IBOC lowering springs, IBOC dampeners, and sway bars. Now this can all be bought as one kit to work together. This system is perfect for the arrive and drive type of person Their Sportline spring kit lowers the car 1.6 inches from stock. Their Pro dampener kit is designed to work with that ride height, so you don't have to worry about any kind of messing around with shock settings and dampening settings. And their sway bars are meant to help this softer spring still stay flat in the corner. Now, the reason why we're going with this kit is because we do daily drive the car a lot and we wanted something nice and soft to ride on, but still good for the weekend at the track. So now, because we are going to be lowering the car, although not drastically, an alignment will need to be done after that's done, and of course camber correction, camber kit to go along with this would be a good idea. If you're tracking the car a lot, it would probably be a good idea to figure out what a good race alignment would be. Something a little bit more camber, a little bit more toe out. There's tons of fast guys at the track that can give you hints on where to go with that. And of course, as we set up this car and play around with it, we'll figure out what's fast and let you guys know. Well, I guess it's time to get these boxes open and take a look. Well, now that we got everything out of the box, it's time to rip the old suspension off this and change the rear lower control arms, because if you remember, well, you probably don't, you didn't see the video, we have ITR rear lower control arms for these shocks right now. So we've gathered some of the necessary hardware that we did not have before, so it's time to put the stuff on the car. Well, there's the first one out.
So what we have here are the Eibach Sportline springs with the Eibach Pro line dampeners. What we have here is the Eibach Sportline spring, lowers it 1.6 inches. We got the Pro damper, and it comes with bushings for the top hat and a sleeve. It comes with a dust cover and a bump stop. This is what your kit doesn't come with. It's the top hat and the silencer and the washers and the special washer for the strut that only goes on one way. It's like a V. So now we're gonna assemble it and throw it on the car. First you'll get your strut, get your spring, put that on there. You go get your bump stop and then throw it into your dust cover. Then you want to get your special washer that only goes one way. Then you want to get your top hat. Push the bushings in. Without dropping it. Get your washer.
Should be on enough to hold. Now, because this spring is shorter than stock, we were able to compress it by hand. It only has to go a little bit to get the nut started. So, installation is basically the opposite of removal. It's easiest first to you're gonna have to push the knuckle up a little bit to get enough room to hang the shock in there, put a nut on the top to hold it in place, and you can start assembling the lower while it's all loose so you have room to fidget with everything and then tighten it down. One note when assembling these, just like stock shocks, unlike full body coilovers, they only have a small nick in the bottom of the shock body for the fork bolt. So having them properly lined up before installation will really help out.
One of the things we changed on this car when we went to the teen suspension was the rear lower control arms. These are Integra Type R lower control arms. You can see they're constructed a little bit differently than the ones that normally come on an EG. It has to do with the shock body. So obviously going back to a suspension for the EG, we had to switch back to these EG lower control arms. Now, looking in here, you can see the rubber bushing looks really in kind of crappy shape. It's torn all the way around. I think what I'm going to do is probably order some Suspension Techniques solid bushings, some new bushings for this thing, and go ahead and install those on those. But we need to be able to drive the car, so for the moment we're going to put it together with the crappy lower control arms. These are the ones that originally came off of the vehicle, and that way we can get it back on the road. The front's in, the rears are assembled. We're going to go ahead and put these together. We're going to slide this in first rather than put the lower control arm on. We'll put that on afterwards, actually. Nut it up. Okay. Up a little more. There we go. So the shocks and springs are on, but in order to mount our sway bars, we're going to need both front and rear lower control arms from either an EX or an Integra, as these do not have sway bar mounts. But that's a good thing because we can also replace the bushings and have fresh bushings in the car. Today I'm doing a little bit of work on budget EG. Last time we had it out, we went road racing, and when we do that, we have a pair of brake pads we put on that are actually made for running on the track. The next outing this car is going on is an autocross tomorrow morning, and the brakes aren't going to get quite so hot, so I'm going to change the brake pads back to the street pad. Those will be a little bit less harsh on the rotor, and because they're not really going to be getting up to operating temperature. So I thought it was a good opportunity to show you the brake kit on this. The brake kit is actually manufactured by Hasport for fast brakes. It utilizes a Willwood 4-piston caliper with a hat and rotor that's actually pretty inexpensive. The kit is designed to be as big as it can be and still fit under a 15-inch wheel. Now, it doesn't fit under every 15-inch wheel. As a matter of fact, you got to make sure you buy the right wheel. This particular kit will fit under the Koenig dial-in, which is what we have on this car. It'll also fit in an Avanti wheel that's very, very similar to the Koenig. I think it's even manufactured by the same company. Or the Cozy 15-inch wheels that you see, and probably some others, but we haven't tried them on all cars, so you need to make sure that you do a little research before you buy this kit and make sure you have the right wheels and they're going to fit. So the way this Willwood caliper works is it's got this retaining clip right here, and once you remove that, you can actually slide the pads out from there.
now that we got those out, we'll go ahead and put the street pads back in. I've actually marked the street pads so they go back in the same place. LI for left inside and LO for left outside. Okay, it looks like these pads are a little bit thicker than the race pads. They've been worn a little bit, so that means my pistons have kind of extended a little bit into out of the caliper. So I need to move those back in order to be able to fit this back in. I'll try first using the actual brake pad itself as a lever, but now it doesn't want to do that. So let me get a tool for that. Sometimes when you're prying on the little cylinder, it will want to just basically move the fluid inside here rather than back up the line. So I find usually if I take the top one and compress it in first, and then I go to the bottom one, that'll usually do the trick. Okay, they're in. Now I need to line up the holes. Now we can put our clip back on. They are installed. That was pretty easy. Now I just need to do the other side. Once you're done changing your brake pads, by the way, I totally recommend that you torque your wheels immediately. We've all heard stories about somebody going out on the racetrack, not having their wheels torqued on, and losing it out on the track. It's embarrassing, damages fenders, can really screw up your day. If you want more information on this brake kit, head on over to fastbrakes.com. It actually comes in two flavors. It comes with this, with the Wilwood caliper. It also comes with a StopTech caliper. Those calipers are a little bit stiffer. Some people prefer them over the Wilwoods. Now, on top of that, StopTech also makes a kit that's very similar. The difference between the fast brake kits and the StopTech kit is the bracket. The bracket that comes on the fast brakes kit actually has a place where you can bolt on a cooling duct. The StopTech one does not. So I would recommend you take a look at the one at Fast Brakes. Another thing, if you're going to be doing a lot of street driving as well as track driving, I suggest you go out and purchase two sets of rotors. One set that you will use with your street pads, another set that you'll use with your race pads. Since we barely ever drive this car on the street, we went ahead and just use the race pads the majority of the time with these rotors. They're going to wear out a little quicker that way, but we do, whenever we go do autocross or switch to street driving, we do put in the street pads. One more thing. Anytime you get done changing the brake pads, there's usually a little bit of a gap between the pad and the rotor. So when you get in the car, pump the brakes a couple times really hard, and that will bring fluid back down and close that gap. There's nothing more disconcerting than to get in your car, take off, and the first time you press on the brakes, it goes right to the floor. If you got some time, head on over to the VTECacademy.com website and check out some of the shirts we have. We have some nice new black t-shirts that make good work shirts. Anyway, thank you very much, and I think I'll leave you with some of our times at the autocross tomorrow. You can watch what it looks like from inside the car. I'm here with Budget EG today, and we're going to be doing some engine modifications. For those of you who maybe this is your first video or maybe have forgotten, we did an engine swap in this car called Budget EG. We did a K24 A4 out of a 2003 to 2005 Honda Accord. We swapped the engine and transmission into this car, and it put out a little over 160 horsepower. We thought that was pretty good, but also we'd hoped we could get some more horsepower out of it. Now, I know I said this a couple years ago, but I'm finally ready to do some modifications to this engine to see if we can't get a little bit more horsepower. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with VTEC Academy, this engine swap we did quite a while ago for a little over $3,000. And honestly, we could have done it for less than that. But the engine is the Accord, and the Accord puts out 160 horsepower stock. With our header and our cold air intake, we were actually able to get 160 horsepower at the wheels on the dyno. Now, there are a lot of things about this motor that kind of keep it from making a lot more horsepower. One of the things is it has a VTEC cam gear, the one that's adjustable, only goes to 20 degrees. Now, was it 25 degrees? Doesn't matter. But what we're going to be doing with this particular engine is we're going to put a 50-degree VTC in it. That's going to allow us to get a lot more tunability on that cam and hopefully punch up the mid-range significantly. One of the other things is it has a really long intake manifold. Now, this manifold, because it has such long tubes, is actually designed for torque. Remember, this engine is made for a much heavier car than this Civic EG. We're looking for a little bit more torque at higher RPM, which is going to help us with peak horsepower. So we're going to be using
the much shorter RBC manifold that comes on the 2006 Civic Si. Another thing is the throttle body size. It's kind of tiny. Originally, I had gotten this throttle body. This is a bored Accord throttle body. It comes from King Motorsports in Wisconsin, and they enlarge it significantly. And that should help us with higher RPM flow and should help free up a little bit more horsepower as well. One of the other things we thought about doing was put a 4-to-1 header on this, but my understanding is it don't really perform well at the RPM we're going to be able to get out of this engine. So we decided to go ahead and leave the 4-2-1 header on. This particular one's a DC Sports. It would probably be nice to look at some of the other headers that are available, see if one of those might create more horsepower, but I didn't have any of those handy. Anyway, let's go to the modifications. Just for comparison, here's the throttle body we're taking off, and here's the one we're putting on. Quite a bit of size difference. Pro tip, when you're doing the engine swap, make sure you plug this particular vacuum line. A lot of people overlook it. This is the one that feeds the front mount on an Accord, and if you don't plug it up, you wind up with a really high idle. Out. One of the things about putting the throttle from the Accord on here is the fact that you need to have a bit of a spacer in there. Now, nobody makes just like a blank spacer, but they do make these adapter plates. This is the Carceps one. It has a couple ports on the side. I plugged one and made one into my brake booster port. A gasket underneath. Another gasket on top, and the throttle body. The only thing I have left to do now is drop the motor down. Hopefully it all clears. Oh, I have one other thing to do, the 40-degree VTC. I really don't think the manifold and throttle body are going to do anything without the 40-degree VTC. So we're going to go ahead and put that in as well. When we do our tuning, we will do some tuning as though we had a 25-degree VTC, and then we're going to use the 50-degree VTC that we have that we're going to be installing, and we'll use it up to probably about 40 degrees to see what kind of extra power we can get with that. Next on my list is to drop the motor down. Just to kind of go through the process, the first thing I did was I loosened up the rear mount and I shifted the bolt. It had been going through the bottom, on the back bracket, it had been going through the bottom bolt hole. So supporting the motor from underneath, I loosened up that rear bracket, dropped it down, put the bolt back through so that the rear was lowered first. Took off this transmission mount first. I just took the foot mount, unbolted it, flipped it over, rebolted it. Interestingly, I found it was a little bit difficult to do that in the car. It's easy to assemble that mount when the whole mount is out of the car. An easier way to do this might have been to actually take the whole mount out, but I didn't want to do that. I actually wound up having to use an open-end wrench in order to keep the nuts steady while I loosen up the Allen bolts on top. Once I got that mount flipped over, and by the way, I had to lower the engine in order for the bolt holes to line up again. At first, when I took the mount out and just flipped it over, it didn't look like it was going to line up. So then I lowered the engine to pretty much where it was going to go, and that actually brought the bolt holes back in alignment. So I bolted all that back together. Then last, I went over on the passenger side mount and just basically took the through bolt out, dropped the motor down, put the through bolt back through, and tighten it all up. So now my motor is at the K24 position. I had it at the K20 position. I wanted that extra ground clearance, and since I wasn't running this manifold, I could, you know, I was using the Accord manifold, I could run up a little bit higher. It just actually touches some of the hood structure when you do that. But anyway, now it's lowered down where you would normally mount a K24, and as you can see, my intake manifold clears. I'm kind of curious if that vacuum line would have cleared had I lowered this. So if you're planning on doing this, you don't need to check and see if that vacuum or the brake booster line clears before you go to all the trouble I did. But anyway, I now have the engine down low where it needs to be. One last thing to do, and that's to change the VTC from the 25 degree to the 50 degree.
Like a Honda. Think he stalls? All right, guys. Today on the Budgie EG project, we're going to be switching out the cam gear. Not sure what's in here, but we're going to be switching out to a 50 degree VTC. So we're going to get started and see where it takes us. We're going to try to do it the easy way. Yeah, so Scott's here to help me out. So let's just get to it.
There it goes.
And the dipstick. Okay, so you already have it. Top dead center. Yeah, yeah.
Nope, right there. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'll go in, baby. Is that right?
Yep, you got it.
Oh, I didn't mean to touch it.
Mark, and then a dark here. Mark, and then dark here. This never moved because we went this, but you can see where it's marked here. And then down below, that little white line, once you move it over a bit, it lines up. So we ended up doing that 50 degree cam gear, and we got it on. Everything's lined up, and now we're just, we've got to look in the book to get all our torque specs for the cam caps, everything like that. Other than that, we're going to wrap it up, and she should be good. Because that doesn't sound right.
Well, there
What does that
again,
sound
it's
like?
50, like, maybe it's like
Maybe it's
bouncing
this?
around.
Right.
Sounds better.
That's an injector.
Think so?
That's what he was doing it last time when he first started it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think there's an injector stuck.
It's been sitting a while.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's a bad injector or a bad coil, but we got a problem with it. I'm gonna have to solve that problem. You know, I meant to do that first before I had to change the cam.
Dang it! And we thought it was a cam.
All right, anyway, so what I'm gonna do is actually, I'm gonna do that under a separate video, do the troubleshoot real quick and figure out what the problem is. But so don't worry about it right at the moment. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it right at the moment. We'll get it worked out, and as soon as I troubleshoot it, we're going to go ahead and take it to the dyno and get a dyno tune and see what kind of horsepower we picked up. But obviously, I need to fix the problem first, and then we can go from there. This thing's running like trash.
Why? 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 Why?
Not really sure what's wrong. I mean, we recently did some modifications to it, and we changed to a 50-degree VTC, new intake manifold, an overboard throttle body. I had Chris put together a intake air tube, but the car is just running horrible, absolutely horrible. Now, I'm not really sure what's causing the problem. Gonna have to get diagnostic with it and see if we can't figure it out. I'm hoping that the computer's going to tell me something. So first is I'm going to fire up the laptop, connect it to the K-tuner, and see if we can't find what might be the problem. And let's be honest, normally when I was troubleshooting somebody's car, I would ask them, what's the last thing you did? Because that's usually where the problem is. Well, I shouldn't say usually. It's often where the problem is. And the last thing we did was I had Roy actually change the VTC. And that means he needed to make sure he got the cam chain on with everything lined up properly. And I'm just gonna guess that that's where the problem is. So off comes the valve cover, and we'll put everything in TDC and see if you got it right. Those are correct. Still got a mystery problem. Not sure what's up. We were scrambling on this EG trying to get it finished. We did all sorts of stuff to try to figure out what was making it idle so poorly. Eventually, like I said yesterday, one of the things you should always check is whatever the last thing you changed was. And it turned out it was a bad VTC gear. It was gummed up inside. So what happened was, the first time I started up the car, gave it a little rev, the cam gear shifted slightly and then locked up with it advanced. So basically at idle, the ECU was commanding 0, but the cam gear was actually clocked somewhat. So it was like it was off a tooth and a half on the timing chain. So it just flat wouldn't run. I found another cam gear. We did some testing. You can see right here, we're adding air pressure to the camshaft. After sealing up all the holes, we're able to get that one to move freely. So we decided to quickly jump in there and change out the cam gear once again. And this time when we fired up, it ran nice. Other than just being a slightly rough from having kind of some old fuel in it, car runs very, very well. So we're ready for our dyno appointment tomorrow.
But that was a close one.
I was a little bit worried. I had to cancel the dyno appointment once before for a different reason, and I was really feeling bad about doing that to our friend Tim over at Exact Dyno. But we got it running. We're ready to go get it done. all the mods are done and I finally got it running right. We chased down all the problems, so now we're gonna stick it on the dyno and see what kind of horsepower. So I'm over here at Exact Dyno with Tim Kelly, my favorite tuner, and we are going to hook this thing up and get some numbers, see if we can't make some more horsepower and then compare it to what it originally made. He's the one that made the original tune, so we can do a little comparison and see how it does. It's interesting, I've been told by many that putting a 50-degree VTC on these things doesn't matter. I think combined with the RBC manifold and the larger throttle body, I think we have some potential to make some more horsepower, although I'm not sure it's going to be up top. I really don't think these heads flow enough for big horsepower on top because of the exhaust cam. But, you know, I'm curious to see. King Motorsports says it works really well on the TSX, so I'm curious to see what it does on the Accord motor. Hoping for 5 to 8 horsepower mid-range. So, obviously, let's not waste any more time.
Okay.
So, but interesting, I really thought it would do something.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, so.
That's the magic manifold. But
that's the
not
magic
here.
manifold, yeah. And the 50-degree VTC,
Yep.
and it was not.
Took it all the way out to 40 and it would just go down. It ended up at 30 to 5.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Well, okay, so dead end. We're not gonna waste any more time on this particular thing. It's kind of fascinating that it, I mean, obviously I beat up on the thing for a few years.
Yep.
So probably suffering a little bit there, but maybe it shouldn't be suffering that much.
Pretty strong engine.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong engine. So yeah, we made like another horsepower or half horsepower at, you know, higher RPM, which isn't really that advantageous. I'd rather have the torque at the lower end rather than horsepower at the top end. So particularly since it's not more horsepower. If it was 15 more horsepower, then I'd be, oh, you know, but
it's not.
But basically we lost a bunch of torque, particularly in the mid-range.
Yep.
So I mean, it's funny because it made it sound like it was really coming on hard, but that's because it was dying and then coming on hard, you know what I mean? So, but okay, cool.
All right.
Hey, so anyway, guys, we're gonna conclude this part of this episode today. Tim, thank you very much for your help. I really appreciate it. Anyway, guys, if you like what you see, please think about liking and subscribing. But just to let you know, that's not the end of the modifications for this engine. I've got one more plan in mind for this engine before I totally give up on it. So we'll catch you next time. Any words of advice for Hope?
Hang on, don't puke.
And if you can throw up, aim towards the door.
Aim towards the door and let me know.
Budget AG finally back on the track.
Oh, it's been too many years.
It has been quite a while. What do you think?
That was good. Car's predictable as always. The brakes were questionable as always, and the tires were a little old though, so it pushed a little too much for me.
Brakes were questionable. Too much pedal travel.
Yeah, it stops every time, but when you're that close to the floor to get the car to stop, it doesn't leave you with much room for comfort if you have to pump the brakes because of issues.
Okay, well, we'll work on that. Got a few things to work on actually.
I scared her once. We overshot braking zone pretty good.
That's not good. I was not happy.
Well, this was your first time out there. What'd you think?
Everyone said it was gonna be super scary, but it was actually fine. Like, I'm an adrenaline junkie, so it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun?
Yeah.
Honestly, out of the 3 people I took for a ride that day, there 2 haven't been on track before, she was the quietest and the most comfortable in the car.
Oh, is this something you'd like to try?
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Cool. Well, I think the first thing we need to do is probably teach you how to drive a stick.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't have
step one.
Yeah, I don't have any autos, so stick's going to have to be what it is. I was a little concerned about watching other people motor away from you.
The car's definitely down in power for riding in Pro Auto. I'm so used to NASA where it's like Miatas and Civics and some RX-8s and stuff. Everybody's low horsepower, so it makes it, you know, makes a big difference when you're fast in the corners. And Pro Auto, it's seems like wealthier people with more horsepower than cornering ability. There aren't good drivers out there also, but in the street car groups, everybody seems like 400 or 500 horsepower. So it's just carrying extra corner speed doesn't seem to make a big enough difference, because your top end speed and your mile an hour into the straights is so vastly slower than theirs that just the corners aren't making up for it. There's 3 straights that are long enough that if you have the power, it makes a big difference. They can put 4 or 5 car lengths on you pretty easy.
Right.
Which is what I was noticing.
So what do you think? Another 50, 75 horsepower would make it worthwhile?
You could see 210, 215.
215 would probably make it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, what, nice around 220 that you see most people end up with?
You know, we tried doing all those modifications on the car where we changed the intake manifold, the throttle body, the 50-degree VTC, and it made squat difference. I mean, we lost torque, we lost horsepower. Well, we gained a horsepower, which isn't enough. We need lots of horsepower. I think we're going to do a TSX head-on. In fact, I know we are. We're going to do a TSX head-on, and that should give me anywhere between 40 and 60 horsepower with tuning.
Would put us at 205, 225.
Yeah, and I think that'd be a lot better.
Yeah, that would make a big difference.
All right.
It felt like the supercharged Camaro owners group.
We know what we need to do. Brakes.
Yep.
Better stopping. Engine. Better going.
Yep.
So we're gonna make some improvements on this and take it to another event. See how it does. In fact, there's an event coming up next month. Later this month in California. Or is it next month? It's in June.
Next month.
Next month in California. Kind of a cool invite only thing. So we're going to go there, try that out, see how it works out. In the meantime, we're going to work on your EK and get that ready as well.
Yep.
So we've got a cool EK project that we have a Grand Am motor, a Honda Grand Am motor. So that should be a lot of fun. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode.
And don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos just like this.
All right, guys, so as you've seen in the last video, we had a little bit of difficulty with people pulling away on the straight. So we would catch them in the corners, but then they would leave us in the dust. So what we decided to do is take our 160 horsepower motor and turn it into a 200 horsepower fire breather. And hopefully we can get more than that even. So what we're going to do today is we're going to swap a TSX head on this, change out the intake manifold, put a 50-degree VTC on it, and then go to the dyno. And you know what? With that much horsepower, we're going to need an LSD as well. So let's put a 6-speed transmission in here.
That'll work.
All right. Well, guys, I'm going to let you do this. I'm going to go look for a transmission.
Cool.
All right? Excellent.
Get it.
So we got our K24 pulled. It took me just under an hour. There were some complications. Our O2 plug didn't want to unplug, so I had to unscrew it. And then the header, I didn't have the right wrench. I'm missing the wrench that we usually use to get to that bolt. But other than that, it came out really smooth. So now we're going to strip it down so we can put the TSX head on there. All right, so we got the head off. The new head is right over here. This actually I got in a salvage yard. We were in the salvage yard looking to pull a TSX engine, and we found a ginormous hole in the block. And oh man, my rubber bands that were holding all the rockers together came apart. Anyway, we found this big giant hole in the block, so we decided just to grab the head, and the head is in just really good shape. It's super clean. I'm kind of surprised that this engine had a hole in the block. I don't know, what they did in order to cause that, but as you can see here, the head looks great, and this is what we're going to put on. Now, one of the things kind of interesting about the swap is I hear people talking about having valve clearance issues. I put an RSX head on a CV motor, probably like 2002. We ran that engine for years without any issues, including supercharging it. And that had a full 50-degree VTC. But that's a fairly low compression engine, so maybe there isn't really a problem with that. But we're going to be putting TSX head on, so I'm going to be really curious to see if we have piston to valve interference. So I think what we're going to wind up doing is probably advancing the camshaft and checking it all out to see if it makes contact, because obviously we don't want to put this engine together and then break a valve off and trash it. But next step is to put this on and see how it goes. Maybe turn it through its complete rotation, try to advance the camshaft, turn it through the rotation, and see if everything works out okay. If it does, I think we're golden, and we can put it back in the car with our LSD transmission and get it running. Did you already turn it?
Yep, I did.
Oh, okay.
What we can do though is we can put clay on the tops of those things and just turn it over and see if they touch.
Yeah.
All right, so let's pop the head off again. Bumped a little bit. Well, that's because it's smashing the clay.
Oh yeah.
You can feel it bumping.
I just felt it
Whoa. Oh. It just took the clay with it.
Oh, oops. Is it over here?
Yeah,
oh, so it is. So see where it's hitting? It's not hitting at the peak. It's hitting where. So here's what's interesting. It was hitting the whole time. There was a little clean spot right there where it was actually making contact. Okay, so as you can see, that didn't work. So what we did is
So we went down to the salvage yard and looked for a K24 A1, a CRV motor. We had done one of those way back in 2002 and decided that was going to be our best bet.
We finally got K24 with the TSX head put together. I'm just gonna put, looks like a pretty much brand new flywheel, a new pressure plate, a new disc, and a slightly used pressure plate. It'll be fine. We have our EP3 RSX transmission with LSD. And you can tell because you can see through the differential. There's just a hole there.
So Scott took our K24 A1 motor, bolted our TSX head on it, and we are now ready, well, almost ready to put it back in the car. So, did you run into any special problems this time around when you're putting the head on this? I mean, no piston to valve clearance.
No, it rotated. I checked that, so it was good that way. We ended up putting our 40-degree VTC in there after I had assembled the engine, and then I'm
50
hoping,
degree actually.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We actually made a 40 degree for one of our engines. That's why. That's why we think like that. But anyway, it's 50 degree. That's okay.
The 50 degree. The only problem I had, I didn't hold the cams properly when I was trying to undo the bolts and stuff, and sheared the, what do we call it, the trigger wheel for the cam sensor back here a couple times. But the third time was the charm.
Yeah, there's a key built into the,
and it's very fragile.
Yeah.
So I mean, just actually accidentally turning that, like, it just sheared it right off. But other than that, nothing else. I mean, we had put our different manifold on there, and I decided to put an LSD transmission on here so we can
that's good,
get all the power to the ground.
Excellent. And also it's a tighter gear ratio. The Accord ratio box is kind of spaced out a little bit. This RSX one nice and tight, so it should be a lot more effective.
That way you can give Carter a run for his money.
That's right. Yeah, he can't get all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Dang it. All right, cool. Well, right now we're putting the putting it back together. We had borrowed the CRV thermostat housing to try to put on our K24 Z motor. Didn't work out so well, but we're gonna slap it back on this. And you ran into a problem.
Yeah.
This motor, by the way, had 240,000 miles on it.
It's pretty rough looking.
Yeah, I didn't actually bother refreshing it or anything. The cylinder walls looked fine, so we just slapped the head on it. Yeah, and
I found that this upper bolt for the thermostat housing is stripped. I can't get it to tighten. It just kept click, click, click. So I have a helicoil kit, and we're going to fix it right now. I already have the right size drill. Hope that's straight. I don't know if the folks out there know about this is for our 610.
Yeah, this is permacoil. Basically what this does is you drill and tap a larger hole into the damaged area. And by the way, these come in lengths. You can get extra long ones, but short ones fine for what we do. Comes with a tap to tap out the slightly bigger hole. Then it comes with an installation tool for the actual permacoil. There's a couple different brand names of this. Helicoil, permacoil. This little tool kind of compresses it.
Sometimes it can be done without that tool, but you still have to have the part that he's turning it with. But having the tool is a lot easier.
So it makes it nice and tight. You'll put this up against it, screw this down, it'll insert the thread for you right in there.
Now I'm gonna tap this hole with our awesome little tap holding socket.
There you go.
Towards me.
That's square. So normally when you tap a hole, what you want to do is you want to go in about 2 turns, then you back up a half turn in order to clean it out. On the small stuff, not necessarily necessary unless you feel it start to bind.
Yeah, I can feel it's going through quite nice.
Yeah, this is cast aluminum, not steel, not billet aluminum. So it's the pieces that are going to be cut tend to crumble, and therefore you don't necessarily have to back it up to clean it out.
It's not as sticky as billet.
Yeah, billet's a lot stickier, and it comes off in long curls, and those can tend to jam. And steel, same way, comes off in curls.
This hole is a sunken hole.
Oh, is it? Yeah, put it out a little more.
Just mess with it till you feel it, and you can feel it. Oh yeah, thanks.
Well, I don't know if I put it on tighten or loosen. It's on tighten. You're in luck.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much easier.
I think I have more water pumps, so if we do, we'll just change the water pump.
Oh, there it is. I can't tighten it anymore. Cool. Yeah, now it's tight.
There you go.
I decided since we're going for more of a performance engine, I'd go for more of a performance transmission. I had this RSX transmission with LSD, and I decided to use it. Now, it's a little bit different. So instead of a countershaft speed sensor, this uses a vehicle speed sensor. That's on the back side. If you recall, the countershaft speed sensor from our Accord transmission was on the front. This is a connector for the countershaft speed sensor. It uses a 5-volt power, a signal ground that goes back to the ECU, and it also uses the blue signal wire, which goes back to A18 on our A-plug at the computer. Now, this, although it might work if we connected it to the VSS, it's not really correct. This has a 5-volt signal, and we want a 12-volt signal. So what I've done is I've already tapped into a black-yellow wire in our harness right here, and this is going to be the power for a VSS. I also found a black wire, which is a ground wire, connects to the G101 ground that usually bolts somewhere on the head or on the intake manifold. That's tapped into it as well. That is going to be our ground wire. And next, I need to tap into the signal wire. So, taking our countershaft speed sensor, we find the blue wire right here, and I've cut this small blue wire that will reach down with all the others, and I need to splice it in to this blue wire. So I'm going to show you how that works. Start off with some wire strippers. I'm going to use the 18 gauge, 20 gauge opening. That's the one all the way down here at the end. And I'm going to basically just use it to cut through the insulation. Once I do that, I'm going to just kind of pull it and get it loose. Okay, you can see a little bit of bare wire there. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and slice that open. Oh, this is always fun. And then peel that off. Now what I've done is I'm exposing about a 1/4 inch of the wiring harness here, and we're going to splice into that. You can solder it, but what I like to do is something a little bit different. This is the female spade connector you would use for doing a relay. I like to cut off the end, and now I'm going to use this to crimp my new wire and old wire together. I'm going to expose about the same amount of wire, like that. Now I'm going to take my crimps and put this over that. I'm going to feed the wire in from this side. And I'm going to crimp it down. Now what I've done is I've crimped the 2 pieces of wire with the smaller side of that. Now I have the big side up there. I'm going to use a slightly larger size crimper. Crunch it down. And this larger side is actually going to hold the 2 insulation pieces together. Now all they need to do is tape that up and it'll be ready to go. By the way, I highly recommend these crimpers right here. These are IWIS 1428Bs. They actually have 3 different sizes of wiring that you can crimp together. I tend to use, on K series, I use the 2422s quite a bit and also the 2018s, but it also has these round holes right here, and that's for crimping just insulation on. We'll use those in a minute when we crimp on our connector on the end. Now this is done. We're going to go ahead and tape it up. You want to be careful when you're taping things. You don't want to stretch the tape on, because when you stretch the tape on after you're done, it actually will recede a little bit and it won't grip quite as tight. Also, start at the thin end and then tape it towards the thicker end. And because you're going to be grabbing 2 wires, the tape will naturally want to work its way up there, and you can get it nice and tight and waterproof, and just smooth it on rather than stretch it on. Okay, now that's ready to go. We're going to lay that in there. We're going to take our 2 wires, bring them out right here, and bring them down to our connector. So we're going to trim all 3 of these to the same length. Let's put some tape to hold it all together there. All right, trim to the same length. They reach down there no problem. Next, we're going to crimp on our connector. This is our vehicle speed sensor connector. You can buy these new. There'll be a link in the notes. These are the terminals that go on, and these are the insulators. There will be links to buy all that stuff new in the show notes. I usually get these used because I've got tons of harnesses from old swaps and stuff like that. Just clean them up nice, make sure there's a rubber insulator in there, and make sure you use rubber insulators on top too. One of the things that's kind of wild about these is I've seen on numerous occasions the water will get down into the vehicle speed sensor, it'll rust off those little pins, it'll stop working, and your car stops going into VTEC. So you want to make sure you use insulators. First things first, we slide the insulator on. We strip back about 3/16 of an inch of wire, grab our terminal, we're going to use the smallest one since this is only a 20 gauge wire. Crimp it down. Next, slide our insulator in, and we're going to use the smaller of the 2 circles. Crimp that, and now we have a nicely crimped terminal. All right, rinse and repeat, or strip and repeat. One of the things I'm constantly doing is stripping them first, then putting these on, which is a mistake because then the little wires jam you in the finger. All right, all 3 crimped on. Now, I should have put this on beforehand. 3 wires is about the max you can put in there at any one time. They are through. And now we're going to install a connector. The connector This is a female connector, so the way it's numbered is clip up, 1, 2, 3. In position number 1 goes our black ground wire. In number 2 goes our power wire. And number 3 goes our signal wire. All 3 are in. Make sure they're seated properly. And then we install the lock. This prevents them from backing out. Ready to go. Alrighty. Time to tape it up. Okay. The VSS connector's on there. We're all switched over. Time to wrap this harness up and get it on the engine so we can get it inside the car. Alright, so our engine is ready to go in. We have a couple of things we can do, but pretty much it's ready to get installed. Now, this actually being a different transmission is going to require a different mount kit. So let me kind of show you what's going on here. This was our original engine in the car, a Accord engine, a Accord transmission, and it used what Hasport calls the EGK4 mount kit. This is what the rear bracket looks like. This is what the transmission bracket looks like. It's going to use the same mounts that all of the EG series mount kits that Hasport makes uses. They're all the same, but these two brackets are different. Let's take a look at our new setup. This is with the RSX transmission. You can see over on this side, this mount now has 3 bolts holding it on top of the transmission. It's completely different. This, by the way, is also the same as you would find on a 2012 SI, a 2nd Gen TSX, an 08 to 14 Accord motor. And then, of course, we have the rear bracket. The rear bracket is unique to the 06 to 11 SI, the RSX, the EP3. It has 1 bolt on top, these 2 bolts down below. So we went ahead and grabbed out the correct mounts. This is called an EGK2 mount kit, slapped them on, and we're ready to put it in, except for one thing. We got down here, and check this out. No threads in that bottom hole. That means I got to helicoil another hole. Oh well. I was going to install the engine right now, but I think we're going to go ahead and take a break for tonight.
Okay guys, we finally got back to working on our budget EG with TSX head swap onto a K24 A1. Yeah. Luckily we had some totes full of parts, so I had wiring harness. Brian actually had put that on and was working on it. And we switched to an RSX style transmission from our K24 transmission, so I have to change cables and the shift box. Luckily I didn't eat lunch.
Oh, found the header?
Yeah. I'm only missing one. Cool.
We accidentally forgot about our reverse lockout switch. So I'm going to pull the wiring back out and we're going to add that wire in. No big deal. But I've been working on, got the radiator in, found our reservoir, found our hose that already had our fan switch with a Hassport adapter in it, put in some new mounts, got all the heater lines hooked up. We're actually putting a purge canister in this car so we can run emissions, but all that goes down there where the wiring harness goes in, so I started taking that back apart so I can fix the wiring. We found that one of the holes in the block, or in the transmission, was stripped for the rear bracket, but you may see in one of the videos that I was able to, there's enough thread in there, so we made it work, and I was able to tighten it down good, so that'll be good to go. We have a custom throttle bracket that we had to put on there with our adapter and all that, because we're running the RBC manifold. I don't know what throttle body that was. That was off an Accord, I believe. Brian got it off of a cable driven, not drive-by-wire. Brian went out and bought a new belt, and I was about to put axles in and found that one of the boots is blown, so I'm going to reboot that. Brian's going to find the ECU for it, and once I get the shifter box in there and that axle rebooted and some fluids, we should be good to go. This is our budget EG axle. I went to put it in. The boot is bad. I noticed because my hands were getting all greasy touching the control arm. So, the outer joint, the easiest way, if at all possible, if you can avoid trying to take this joint off, you can chance damaging it trying to take it off. So it's easier to take all this off and get to it from there. Well, you can see that that's been hot. It's like all cracked. So, we'll just start tearing it apart. And it looks like the whole thing could use grease anyways. Oh. Inside here's a little clip. Whoa, don't let it shoot you in the eye. Take off our joint. Take off our boot. Luckily when you do that, it brings all the grease with it. I'll just put new boots on. So you got some new boots. Screwdriver. So, and because that's compromised, it's a little difficult. Just cut that with the razor blade. Bam. Find a dirty rag. Now, if you're doing a factory axle, you can probably take this joint off. You hold this in the vise, and hit it with the hammer. But our joints do not like to come off, unfortunately, so it's easier to do it this way. But I am going to pack some new grease in all this. Just kind of wipe off the old grease. Just kind of clean out the old grease. Now it's hard to pack those with grease. Now, this one doesn't really, you just kind of pack some in there. Most of it ends up in the boot anyways. So this is my outer boot. Oh, where'd my screwdriver go? Oh, it's in the garbage. How'd that get there? Don't forget that little clip, because it's kind of important. Just to make sure. Boom. Put it back on. And that's how you reboot the outside boot. Put the new boots in new grease. That grease will work its way in there. Cool. All the wiring goes in through there. I had everything routed super nice. But we got to pull it all out so we can get a wire all the way back down to the ECU for the reverse lockout. Not a big deal. It's not a fun deal, but it's not a big deal. Okay, well, I found, there's our plug for the reverse lockout. That was the wires that were in it. I got some new pins and seals, and then I needed to fix the O2 sensor too, so we're gonna do that stuff. Okay, we got the reverse lockout plug.
We are ready to fire it up. Basically, I grabbed a, we don't have a tune for this engine, so I just grabbed an RSX Type S tune. This ECU, by the way, is an RSX base model ECU. But I just put an RSX Type S tune in it. One of the things you want to do when you're setting these up is in this right here, which is disable the monitors, you want to make sure that you go in here and disable the immobilizer. Because the immobilizer, if it's on, it's going to look for the chip and the key, and if it's not there, it's not going to allow you to start. So make sure you got that disabled when you get there. Again, this is K-Tuner software, not Honda. We've had K-Tuner in this car since it started. The only difference this time is I had damaged the ECU that was in it, so instead of an Accord 05 ECU, we now have an 0506 RSX ECU, base model ECU. So that's in there. The program's loaded. Let's try to fire it up.
We need to open up the...
Why?
I don't know, so we don't die.
I I'm assuming you want that just in case it bursts into flames. I can pull it out real quick and
well,
it'll burn up out there.
Pull out now.
Something's loose. Oh, come on. Well, we have a bunch of codes. So we're going to have to start troubleshooting these things before we can send it off to get it tuned. Right now we have one unknown code, one O2 sensor heater circuit malfunction, bank 1 sensor 1, that's the main air-fuel ratio sensor. We have an evap emission system vent shut valve control circuit. We can actually just turn that off. And we have an evaporative emissions control system pressure sensor high input. So let's actually go in there, and the O2 sensor one is a bit of a problem. I'm trying to think of what throttle body we have on here, if we have that wired incorrectly or something along those lines. Well, it's actually 5 o'clock, 5:21. It's after work. I've let everybody go home, so I'm going to wait till tomorrow to fix all these problems and see why it doesn't want to idle. It seems to me that it should just TPS is sweeping like it should. We're going to re-upload the code after turning off some of those things. We'll fire it up again. A code for the O2 heater, so we're gonna have to check that out and see what it is. That should work because it was working before with the old motor and the old thing. I'm not sure what's going on with that. We didn't change anything, and we have our unknown. Let's see what the internet tells us about the unknown.
So what's it doing now?
The P1009 is a code for VTC. Either malfunctioning, blocked, or something along those lines. The VTC may be bad. We new head, new block. We use a CRV block, so the CRV VTC we might have used may not be good. What we're going to have to do is do some troubleshooting tomorrow. Also, the thing is not revving. Even with a bad VTC, it should still rev. So there's something else going on there as well. I mean, I look at the throttle and it sweeps cleanly as it should. I look at the map sensor, it looks okay. So my guess is I don't know what the hell it is. So I'm gonna have to stew on this for a little while and see if I can't figure out what's causing our problem. I mean, typically that's a TPS or a map problem that we're just experiencing right there. Particularly since when you try to give it throttle, it just wants to die. That just seems unusual to me. But tomorrow's another day, so I'm going to go home and sleep on it and finish up a wiring video and come back tomorrow with a fresh brain and see if I can't suss this out. When we last left off, this car didn't want to run. What we decided was the problem was the timing chain. Either the guides were worn or the chain itself was too stretched. We kept getting a VTC code, but really, I don't think the VTC was a problem because we replaced that, didn't fix the problem. So we had a real difficult time getting the timing just right when we were trying to set it. So I bought a new chain, new guides, we put that on, and now we've gotten it to fire up and idle okay. It still doesn't want to run perfectly, but I'm hoping that's just the base tune that I used in order to start this thing up. We're off to the dyno now to see if we have further problems. I've been told an interesting story by a friend that if the chain guides are really worn, that usually means the oil wasn't maintained very well and the engine is not long for this world. We may have a perfectly good running engine that dynos well, or we may be setting ourselves up for disaster. Off to the dyno.
Any predictions, Brian?
Predictions. I predict 220 horsepower or big problems.
So everything or nothing?
It's all or nothing.
Oop. Oop, we're there.
Once again, it is that time.
All right, so we wound up with our first little possible snafu, and it may be why the base tune didn't work. I think we might have Accord injectors in here as opposed to TSX injectors, so that may be causing a little bit of a fueling problem on startup. But anyway, if that's the case, then we probably won't have enough fuel injector to actually make this work. I might see if Scott's at work by now, and if he is, I might have him bring some TSX injectors. We'll see.
Exactly how it acts. I might try to fire it up.
So suspicion's confirmed. We do have the Accord injectors in it, which are kind of lean. On top of that, we only had about 47, 48 pounds of fuel pressure, which is really kind of low. We need more like 55. Anyway, we adjusted the fuel pressure and we adjusted the program to be to have the correct size injectors in it, so it wants to idle now. Now it's going to be a matter of making a few runs and seeing if we run out of fuel at the top end. We did a CSS to VSS conversion. We don't have any speed right now. So that would be a problem. Is the speedometer even moving? Well, that would suck.
I could try it with no speed.
Yeah, try with no speed.
Yeah, let's see.
So we need to see if we have continuity. And I guess we also need to see if we have got ground and power there too.
Yep, we had it for a second. There you go.
There you go. Okay, so it's got continuity. So now what we need to check is if the black yellow wire has... Yeah, 12 volts. Okay, now we need to check to see if they're pinned in the correct order.
Okay.
Well, it's connected now.
The wires are in order?
The wires are in order. We have 12 volts where we should, we have a ground where we should. We're now going to check to see if we have continuity back to the computer from the VSS connector. We have continuity. Let's hope it's a loose connector. Look how dirty these prongs are. The frame, it may be a contact problem.
How does everything else look?
Everything else looks fine. We have continuity back where it should be. We have power where it should. So, but these look filthy. So I'm hoping that that's the problem. Anything?
Nothing on the dash either.
So we wind up putting how much? About 180?
186.
186 horsepower, below my expectations, but it's kind of getting choked off, so probably has to do with the fact it's running a Honda catalytic converter and not a big one, a small one for like Integra. It's also running a pretty small exhaust out the back. The header is not, it's a good header, it's a K-tuned header, and we've had pretty good luck with those, but I think that combination of things is probably handcuffing us a little bit on the top end. So I think what we're going to do next is change headers and change exhaust, and either get rid of the cat, at least for the dyno, not for running around town, get rid of the cat for the dyno, and see what we can get out of this thing. I'm still hopeful if we're over 200 horsepower. So I'm a little bothered by the low output. And I guess we'll check, see what camshafts we have too. We might just have some regular Type S cams in there, as opposed to having, I probably have 4 or 5 sets of Type R cams laying around. So might work on that as well. And obviously the injectors were pretty close to being maxed out, so we are going to need bigger injectors to go getting more horsepower. Tim's going to try possibly a few more things, see if he can eke some more out of this. But anyway, looks like we got more work to do. Budget EG is back for more modifications, and AD's here to help me out. He's back as well. So AD, how's it been going?
Not too bad.
Yeah, thank you for helping me pull parts in the salvage yard. I really appreciate that.
Anytime.
Okay, cool. So basically, we are going to take our turbo motor and put it in our budget EG and try to figure out what kind of horsepower we're going to get out. But the first thing we need to do is we need to pull the old motor out. So that's what we're going to do today. I guess we need to start, and let's get going here. Do you have a sequence you go through when you pull a motor?
Drain the fluids.
Fluids first?
Yeah.
I think, you know what I always forget, and you should do always first? The battery, exactly. Let's go ahead and pull that off. We can actually put it on a charger so it's nice and charged, because I don't think I've started this car for like about a month and a half, 2 months. Including motor oil are tough.
Because I've been going to the gym.
You ate your Wheaties, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Where's a piece of weed?
Weed.
Wait, why didn't you take it off from over there?
Barbs.
It's got barb fitting. And I hate barbs. They're as bad as Karen's. Yeah, this brass has got barbs on it. I probably should replace it with a nylon one that has smooth fittings. That way they come on and off. Let's go up.
All right, hold on.
Right?
Yeah.
Melting our shift cables. Let's do a repair. What we'll do is make sure they come out to the left and then come across. So you can see the...
That's just the protective coating, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a steel cable, and then inside that there's another sleeve. Well, I used to have a plate that, except when we changed transmissions, we didn't do a very good job of fixing it all. But we can fix it now. So I had a few years of making modifications to stuff as we swap motors around and such. This would be a good opportunity to clean all this up, get a little bit nicer. I'm going to go ahead and pull the harness. You know what we'll do? Pull the header, the harness, the transmission, and the clutch, because they'll be going on the other engine.
Not the header.
And the idler pulley. Yeah, the header.
Say what?
Oh, no, we're turbo. Dude, for some reason I had supercharger in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We'll throw the header away.
In the bin.
No, I'm kidding. Let me fair and pull the engine. Okay, there we go. Never mind, I got it. Let it come right off. Now, the question is whether or not I should use that with the turbo. I think no.
No.
I'll probably get a different clutch for the turbo. I should have a couple somewhere. Okay, so phase one of our three-phase plan is done. We pulled the motor out. By the way, we are gonna, this is our hybrid, not hybrid, what do we call this? This is our Frankenstein. This is our Frankenstein motor, where we took a K24 bottom end and put a TSX head on it, and took it out and dynoed it, and didn't quite make the 200 horsepower we wanted to make, but we are going to work further on this. We've got another car, we're going to slap it in and put a bigger exhaust and a better intake air tube on it, and hoping to get our 200 horsepower. If that doesn't work, we're going to throw it away. Okay, not really. We'll try cams maybe. Anyway, phase two is I'm going to bring the K23 over here with all the parts we need to make it a complete engine. You made it pretty complete, but it was like the turbo was complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll bring it back over, make it complete, bolt our transmission back up, and get her back in the car so we can try to fire it up. And actually, we should be able to fire it up without hooking the turbo up. The turbo will just be the exhaust.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
All right.
So we can get it running and then call somebody to come over and make intercooler stuff for it.
This one's not going there.
Is that threading right?
Yeah, I think the threads are messed up or something.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That would suck if this engine was no good. I am making a thread cleaning tool because we have one of the threads are messed up on the flywheel. I'm not flywheel, on the into the crankshaft. So I don't have a tap that's, what is that, like M12 by 1.0. So I'm making a thread cleaner out of another flywheel bolt. So there's our tap. See how it works out. Wow, that doesn't go in very deep.
That's what she said.
Not in my experience. Cool.
All right.
You got it. That wasn't terribly difficult, was it? All right.
So that's aluminum?
That's aluminum.
Okay.
Yeah, it was squishing like toothpaste as you were tightening it. This is the K23 that you put together a while ago, so a couple months ago. So what we're going to do now is we're going to install it in the Budget EG. We're trying something a little bit different. This is something I just kind of made. I had an idea of turning this manifold into a center feed. So I made this adapter plate that's going to bolt on the underside right here. And then we're going to be able to bolt our throttle body on. And once we have that done, we're going to make a plate, it's not done yet, that'll have the map sensor and the temperature air sensor where the throttle body used to go. And we're going to basically turn it into a center feed. So I think center feeds generally perform better, so I think that's going to be a big plus. The other thing is I think it's going to help our routing with the turbo. A lot of people, when they do turbos, they do the top-down flow or bottom-up or whatever it is instead of cross-flow. Because we have a center feed, we'll be able to take our turbo, come in, do a cross-flow, come back in, and then feed it like that. I think that's going to help our packaging quite a bit because we don't have end tanks on the top and the bottom, which are blocking the radiator. So I thought this would be a cool way of doing it. This is just an early test piece to see how it all works out. You can see it's machined out for the idle air control valve. Throttle body is actually a little bit oversized. And again, all the markings are because this was a prototype. We're just kind of proving out the program. So if it works out, shoot, we'll make them. So normally I don't like showing stuff for prototyping because then people start asking me for it before we're ready to manufacture them. But if this works out, we'll probably put it into production really quickly. All right, let's, you want to go ahead and install it, 80? Cool. I'm going to get the harness and see what needs to be done with it because we're going to have to move some stuff. I just dropped the 10 in. Well, we'll just have to see if it fits. What I have is I have a skunk throttle body that doesn't stick out quite as far. So if this one winds up not working, if it winds up interfering with our radiator, we'll get the skunk one. All right, because that does stick out pretty far. We either do an aftermarket throttle body or we'll do the whatever. But the wiring harness, otherwise, my TPS reaches. It just goes underneath. The air intake temp sensor, I'm actually going to put it in, I'm going to put it on this plate right here, so that reaches as well. And the map sensor wiring reaches, so we'll have a map sensor on this plate as well. So the only thing I really have to modify is idle air control valve. I need to make that a little bit longer. Easy enough to do. I'll just make a little extension for it, and I wonder if I'll have to see if there's a connector that has a male and female side with this style pin in it, because maybe I'll just buy both sides and make a little extension. Adapter. That would actually be kind of cool. So, but I think we have enough information. I think we should pull the harness off because I'm going to modify it. And let's go ahead and put the transmission on, throw it in the car. Okay. All right, cool. All right. Ready?
You can go low.
Whichever mount aligns second is the one we want to lower to. let's go ahead and lower it down. But basically just put the throttle body on, and I forgot about the purge valve. We need to extend that if we're gonna connect it, which might as well. The idle air control valve, obviously for smooth idle, it's necessary. We'll leave that on. But the problem, of course, is the throttle body quadrant. It's way sticking out there, you know what I mean? So let's drop her down and see what we can do about that. Yeah, because we could make a bracket that either came off, like maybe it had a couple holes there and came off and pulled the throttle from the other side. It would just be a matter of mounting like a car steps thing on backwards, having the cable wrap around, come up like this. That's how we could do that. And that would keep it fairly tight. Yeah. Now, it still wouldn't have room to put the radiator we had in there, but that doesn't mean we couldn't put a tuck radiator in there. We're gonna have a few things we need to do here. We need to get a radiator, get an intercooler, figure out the heater thing. Yeah. What do you see?
It wasn't the turbo line in the way?
Yeah, the turbo. Yeah, we need to do something with the turbo line. I think if we bent it up and then shorten this, that'd probably be fine. Okay. So I guess let's pull it out and start making some modifications. Pretty much it's going to work. It's just a question of changing a few things here and there. Well, guys, I think that's going to conclude another episode of VTEC Academy with our budget EG. We've got a few things we need to do to get it working properly. Not done yet. AD, got any final words about this thing?
I can't wait to see it run.
Me too. One of the things about this car is once it gets a turbo in it, it's going to have a lot more torque. So I'm going to need a wider front tire. That means I'm going to have to actually do something about these fenders. I tried to do something by spacing the stock fender out, and it wound up looking kind of horrible. If you look here at the way the side marker fits, and back here where this body panel is, I just really didn't get it to line up like I wanted it to. So I've got a different solution. What I did was I purchased some fenders from a company called TonyZ Factory, and they have wide fenders specifically for the EG and for both generations of the EK. Let me show you what they look like. These are the EG wide fenders. You can see they actually have a really nice flare built into them. And today I'm going to be fitting those on my car, and that's probably going to take a little bit of work. A lot of times fiberglass fenders have not all the work that needs to be done to them. Like you can see right here, this is a super wide lip, and that's not going to do me any good. So I'm going to need to go in here and actually trim all this back along here, try to make it as nice and clean looking as possible. Another thing you may have noticed is it's missing bolts for mounting the fenders. There are no holes in this thing. So we're going to have to be adding those and making sure we get those in the right spot, along with the mounts for the bumper. And yep, nothing there for the side marker either. So today I'm going to be cutting all those things and trying to get them as accurate as possible so these fenders fit well. We're going to start off replacing the right fender first. So what I want to do right now is I want to actually mark on the frame where the center of our bolt hole is, so that when I put the new fenders on, I can use that to make sure I have aligned any hole I mark with this mark here. Let's see here. Okay, you may notice I'm in different clothes. Actually, my work evening got interrupted by family coming over for dinner, so I kind of stopped abruptly. But I've got the location of these 3 holes marked now, so I can transfer that information over to my fiberglass fenders. Okay, we've run into our first problem. This tab right here, if you look at the place where it bolts, which is right here, it should be pretty much parallel with this surface. And as you can see, it sticks out at kind of a, I don't know, 30-degree angle, 20-degree angle. So it's not where it should be. It should be coming straight up from there. So that's going to need to be modified. You know, with so many fiberglass parts, oftentimes you're going to have to do some what they call massaging in order to get it to fit. Well, this is a perfect example of massaging. So, question is, do I break it and then re-epoxy it with fiberglass reinforcement, or do I cut it off and maybe replace it with something else? I think that's what I'm going to do. Well, the fending part's been removed. Not totally sure. I need to put it back, but we'll figure that out later. These are a lot stiffer than sheet metal, so I would imagine the majority of people are just going to chop that off and not even worry about replacing it. We'll just have to see if it lines up properly. Yeah, once we're bolted down, we may not care. Okay, we're going to mark the fender again. This time what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 marks. We're going to want to make 1 mark on the fender. That is the line that aligns with our hole. And then the second mark we're going to make is actually on our body, so we can tell how far in we need to measure to meet that hole. Okay, I have a really fine scratch across each one of the lines here that's going to tell me where to drill. We have our holes drilled. Let's see how they line up. The holes are drilled. I actually wound up upsizing a little bit bigger than just the 10 millimeters. Wanted to have a little bit of adjustment swing on here. The gap back here looks okay. Not bad for a fiberglass fender. What I want to do now is close the hood, see how it fits. Well, I might slot it a little bit to bring it in a little bit closer. One of the things I noticed was this flap isn't really at a right angle as it should be. It droops down a little bit. So what happens is, as I tighten it, it spread this gap a little bit. So I'm going to need to kind of elongate the hole a little bit in this direction so I can slide the fender. So, in fact, I think I'll do all 3 of them. That should make it fit better. All right, the hole's been slotted. I now have a much nicer body gap here. I'm pretty happy with that. So now I need to mark the other holes and finish getting this thing installed. Okay, as is the case with fiberglass, not totally happy with this. You can see this huge gap up top. Not sure how I'm going to massage that, but this needs to come down. A finger width, holy crap. Well, I got wider fenders that look better than what they did before. I just need to trim the slip we're going to be okay. Huh. I wonder if I twist this out, if that would close that gap and help me out. Of course, that's going to resist twisting because that's not at the right angle. But as I said before, quite often these things require massaging. This may require more massaging than I want to do. All right, so kind of looking at it, it doesn't look real equal on both sides, so I'm going to check a few things out. I'm going to come straight off the shock tower here and got a plumb line. Just go till it touches the... Okay, we're right at about just barely under, let's see, 7 7/8 inches. Let's go check the other side. Right off the shock tower. Well, closer than I thought. Only a 1/4 inch difference between the two, but it's noticeable. First I thought my car was crooked. Now I think the fenders are crooked. Holy crud. You would think that the people that made these would use like a form so they'd be equal on each side, but apparently not. I'm gonna put the bumper on in a moment, but let's just look with the hood down, just to kind of see how the alignment is. This one pretty much comes out to the right to the end of the trunk. Let's take a look at the other side. Yeah, kind of fades away, kind of pokes up a little bit, and of course there's a huge gap here on top of the side marker. Well, they cover the wheels, or the tires I should say, for the most part. So I guess I'll leave them on for now. We are going to a 10-inch wide front tire, that's why I'm doing the wider fenders. It's unfortunate they're not even. But, you know, probably should have done some internet research and saw what other people thought of them. But I got them now, so they're on. It's funny, you get a little bit of a gap down here. So the question is are these too low? Is that what's causing the problem, or is there something else going on here?
Yeah, a huge gap.
Huh?
That's a huge gap.
That's a huge gap. Look over here. That's like a Tesla gap. I mean, this is a kind of a beater car. It's not going to be a show car, never going to be a show car, so maybe I should just relax.
But those weren't cheap.
No, they're $400 some odd plus shipping. Another $150 on shipping. So, but they're fiberglass, and for the same amount of money, I probably could have got a rip-off copy of Pandem, which I didn't want to do. I think the solution, honestly, have you seen the flares I've made for the CRX?
Mm-hmm.
I think if I made a set for this, I think I'd be much happier. So maybe the solution is to take the ones I make for the CRX, make some modifications to them, and try to get them on this car, and then at some point down the road, produce those myself. So, because I would like to see this kind of flare, and then a small piece that went onto the bumper as well. So that was, so the bumper was flared as well. That's what I would like to see. This is pretty cheesy.
Like a glove.
Yeah, that worked out pretty good.
Just add some extra light down here. Some LEDs.
Yeah, that chamfer back in, just kind of odd. I'm gonna have to go in here and I'm gonna have to trim all this back. I haven't decided if I'm gonna do it with a Dremel or or a big die grinder.
Rusty butter knife.
Rusty butter knife. A saw, like a drywall saw. All right, found something else to complain about on this thing. Thank you. So laying this on here, you can see the curve it's got. Let's go look at the other side. This one's got a lot more curve to it. A lot more curve. It's got a nice big hump in the center. The other one's kind of flat almost. No, it's not smooth either. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a lump here, but then it flattens out right here. That one just curves the whole time. So disappointed.
At least they weren't like $2,000 JDM.
Yeah, if it was tandem or something, I'd be pissed. Well, that concludes this particular part of working in the garage on Budget EG. Next, I'm going to test fit the motor and look at the fuel lines. I'm a little concerned that they're close to the turbo, and we'll see if I'm moving those or not. We've got Budget EG here. We have our K-Series with the RDX head, so it's turbocharged, Budget Turbo. And we're going to be installing this in the EG. Hopefully we'll get it in this weekend. But we've got a few things we need to do beforehand. So I have made a list. We are going to replace our master cylinder while at the same time we can reroute some of our fuel lines. And then at the same time, we need to make an adapter plate to kind of close up this hole so we can plug in our harness. And then we're going to install our fuel bracket that holds the filter, fuel sensor, and regulator. Yeah, it's over here actually. This job right here. And then when we're done with that, we need to make some fuel lines for this. So once all that's done, oh, and we'll install the wiring harness. Yeah. Once that's all done, we can actually put the motor in. So that's what we're working on today. Gather around, kids. It's going to be fun. Right now we're using a syringe in order to kind of bail out the old master so we don't drop brake fluid all over our interior.
Putting the lines back on already.
Too soon, Junior.
We discussed moving these fuel lines while I had had the lines disconnected.
Don't put them on yet.
Yeah, getting ahead of myself.
Too damn fast.
So ideally, where would you like these to end up?
Just I'm more interested in this one being behind on the backside.
Is this the return?
That one could be. That one's the feed. Wait, no, that's the return. So. Wait, let me look.
This one's bigger.
That's the feed.
Okay.
That's the return. The return is what I'm interested in getting back
here.
Because then it makes it easier to route the, because I can do like a right angle.
So still this one, return, you'd like that?
Exactly.
I've definitely got it behind there, but I have a feeling I want to go a little closer to the booster and firewall, so you've got a little more access around it.
Okay.
Because it's still pretty close to this. Do you want it back a little further? Or
yeah, back a little bit further. We can get it further now because
we're on the other side.
Because we're on the other side, yeah.
I haven't replaced mine yet, so I haven't driven it. Have to do the. All right, fuel line, supply and return are adjusted. We can further tweak them, but they're on the other side of the brake lines. up a little better. Keep it out of the way of the shavings. All right, I'm happy with that. All right, what else was on the list?
Wait.
So on this white center section, you've got a notch here and one exactly opposite. And in the rubber, there's a connection. So you've got to line those up so that you can get it fully seated on there again. And with this nice bracket that Brian made up,
Clips in.
just like factory.
Yay.
Ish.
Ish. This has been moved behind, which should make it a little bit easier to deal with. That, I think, was fine anyway. Shall we mount the fuel plate in?
Sure.
This is our fuel plate. It is set up to basically control what's going into the engine. We have an input into the filter, 10 micron filter, then a fuel pressure regulator, and then out to an E85 sensor. E85 sensor we got
from a 2014 through, I believe, 2021 Chevy Silverado.
There you go.
Not all of them have them in the junkyard. If they do, they're on the driver's side frame rail inside of the frame, about even with where the cab and the bed come together.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. They have this bracket that actually snaps onto the frame rail. We actually put a bolt on it because it's too tough to... I could probably get the holes just right if I drew them on a computer and cut it. Yeah, but this is in the garage.
Right.
All right, so let's mount it up.
Get one bolt from you. Got it.
It's in.
Yeah. That's pretty solid.
That is pretty solid.
Should work.
All right.
Yeah.
So next thing we need to do on this is put fuel lines in. I guess we need to go get the stuff for making fuel lines.
Yep.
So we finished up the fuel supply side of things. The original fuel filter used to sit in this location. We needed this space. The turbo is going to reside in that location. We brought the assembly over here, added the fuel filter to this location. the vacuum referenced fuel pressure regulator over here. The return has a E85 sensor built into it. The ECU that we're going to run in this car has a capability of tuning depending on its content level. And then we continue the line back to our return. While we had the master out, we adjusted the angle on these lines to better line up to the new system that we installed. One of the other areas we still have to figure out, but we really can't figure out until the engine goes in, is going to be our heater hose routing. The turbo is going to be sitting roughly in this area, so once we hang the engine in the engine bay, we'll get a better idea what we've got for space and what we might have to do to keep a working heater. Next step is going to be to install the mounts into the chassis and onto the engine and get this thing hung.
We just found something out that our motor mount interferes with this, with the intake air tube.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting. So let me see what happens when I bolt it all in.
So originally we had our mount kit set up like this, which is at the high setting, and we notice when we do that, our rear mount interferes with the intake air tube on the turbo. So we're going to set it up as though we have a, we do that because we had a K20 in it. We're going to set it up as though we have a K24 in it because we notice we can, when we have the K24 setting on the rear mount, it works just peachy. So good reason why I should use a K24 block rather than K20 block. But anyway, we're good. If this works, I'm just going to throw a K24 block on it. I think I like that idea much better. Anyway. Yep. We're actually going to call it quits right there. Engine's mounted in the car. Again, K24 height is what we need to clear that intake air tube that's going to come off. So
and close to the turbo.
Yeah, exactly. So this is fine. I mean, it had a K24 in it before, so no loss. Notice the oil pan is hit free. So anyway, so we're going to call it quits for tonight. But we'll be back again. Right now, the engine in, with axles in, we can roll it out of here. We're actually going to bring it back down to work so we can do some fabrication on it, because we need to do intercooler piping, intercooler, radiator mount, all that good stuff.
Good morning, VTEC Academy. It's early. Brian left for his other work early and left me alone here, so I figured we'll get some more stuff done on the Civic, get this thing to a roller state, not roller skate, by the end of this morning. I've got an hour before the junkyard opens. I've got some items I need to pick up there, and then from there I'll go and meet Brian at his other work. But in the meantime, wow, it's both headlights. All right, I'll see if I can find those in the junkyard too. I need to get the axles installed so that we can make this thing a roller and keep the bearings from getting messed up by rolling the car under its own weight without the bearing, without the axle holding that bearing assembly together. So we're going to get to work on that, get this thing to where we can roll it out of here this evening, and get it back to Hasport and have some more fabrication work done on it there. Again, most all of this stuff was left just hand tight as they disassembled this. Well, it's got a lot of droop. It's still going. And again, the key here is this outer CV. The spline section needs to be through the hub, the inside flat face of that outer CV up against the back of the hub. When you tighten this nut down, that actually compresses and holds that whole bearing and hub assembly together. Helpful hint to folks, thought of it as I was throwing this together. If you can see, you've got the hole for the cotter pin to go through. This one actually has them 2 holes, 90 degrees to each other. So it gives you more options to get that cotter pin placed. But helpful hint, I like to have this cotter pin hole go straight forward, backward. That gives you the most access to get the pin installed and uninstalled the next time you need to service it. So just a little helpful hint. We're good. We are a roller.
Much later.
One of the things I need in order to get this thing up in the trailer and stop it where it needs to be is to bleed the brakes. And we just replaced the master cylinder. So I'm going to show you a new product I found that is just absolutely amazing. This is, as you can read right there, a reverse bleeder. What it does is it actually pumps brake fluid from the caliper up into the master cylinder. And I found this thing works absolutely amazing. I had a problem with the car where I didn't properly bench bleed the master when I changed it and was not able to get the air bulbs out of the system. This worked like a gem, totally took care of it. On top of that, a couple times we've had difficulty bleeding clutch slave cylinders. Those can be a real pain in the butt to bleed. This, again, took care of the problem. We reverse bled the system and it worked like a dream. In fact, we used it recently on the 87 CRX that we did the K series in. Anyway, you should check this thing out. Right now, I'm going to show you how it works. The instructions are pretty straightforward. This is how we reverse bleed it. As you notice, we're going to have our pump connected to the caliper. And then what's going to wind up happening is we're going to basically put a feed line into our brake fluid. And then we're just going to kind of pump air through, and we'll know it's through when it starts coming into the reservoir. So it's actually super simple to do. I'm going to set it up so we can do it right now, and let's get started.
I was wondering about the reservoir side of it.
You just kind of get the length right. Then it's got all these tricky little connections. So screw that together, and that's going to go on to our brake pump. Oh, we need a piece of the regular hose. So that's that, that's that. This plugs onto here. This screws into here. We have actual individual adapters for all our calipers. They just kind of snap on like that. Let's test a few sizes real quick on the calipers. Okay, we have 2 different sizes. This actually fits the Honda size. This is going to fit our Willwood calipers, which are up front. And once again, they just lock on. We're doing the rears first because they're farthest away. All right. Go ahead and pop off the cap and just let me know when it's coming through. Not sure if it needs any priming, but here we go. We have a little bit bleeding out on the gurgling.
Yep. Fluid is rising up here.
It is?
Yep.
All right. One down, one to go.
Got a couple bubbles.
Yeah, so
good.
The Whitwoods actually have two bleeders, one on the inside, one on the outside. I'm going to try just doing the outside and see if that doesn't purge the air from both sides. I don't hear any slurping of bubbles. I have pedal. I'm probably going to do it one more time when I am at the shop, but good enough to get us on the trailer. All right, so if I'm at the racetrack and I'm worried about overfilling this thing because I'm pumping it back up through, I actually bought one of these too. It was about 11 bucks. This allows me to suck fluid out of the master and dispose of it. But that way I'm not overfilling it. Normally, if I was doing this in order to get out on the track, I would bleed it until I saw air come up through the bottom of the reservoir. And this is what I would use to keep it from overfilling the reservoir. But good enough for what we need to do, which is basically stop it when we get on the trailer. So we're ready to go. So we got our K23 head bolted to our K20 block. By the way, if I had to do this over, I'd use a K24 block because that would give me a little bit more room between the intake on the turbo and the rear mount. Right now, it's overlapping about that much, which means I'm going to have to flatten the tube out a little bit, which is kind of a pain in the butt. Anyway, that's for another episode. We need to get this thing running. So we got a long list of stuff to do. I want to get the e-brake working. We don't have any cables in it. We need to change the exhaust. We need to build a downpipe. We need to mount our intercooler, so we're going to have to make stuff for that. We need to figure out how to get this radiator in here. Although this may not be the choice. It looks like it's going to interfere with our throttle body. Maybe if we take these off, mount on the front. Anyway, that's all for a discussion later on. We got to get this thing going. We need to get this thing out on the track before the really hot weather steps in. We're like 100 today. And it's going to get too hot for a turbo. So join us as we start making sparks and getting this thing going.
Like a glove. We need a half-size, half-tall radiator.
a quarter size radiator.
So, yes, a quarter size, about 10 inches thick. Radiator moved over to right there as much as possible, off center, and then you do
you have to put the intercooler in front of the radiator.
Whatever you call that, a double backdoor, cross flow intercooler with the double back that's mounted in front, so it's like takes up the whole thing. But pipes can come in over here, so you can in and come out.
When you put the center feed on, what'd you find out?
Oh, it was totally into not only the fan, but even if we
made the fan a pusher, it would have been into the radiator core.
Into the radiator?
It just was not happening.
Got it. So what we then thought about was using a different radiator.
Where'd the tuck one go?
The tuck radiator. If we did this, as you can see, it opened up a ton of room behind the radiator, and it actually allows us room around each end for intercooler piping. So this would work with the center feed. We would wind up having to cut out the grill here in order to mount the intercooler.
What if we just not do the center feed on this particular setup?
That's a legit idea, and I'll tell you why. Because our intercooler is over here, so the piping is actually pretty simple. It just come out of the bottom of the intercooler and boom, right into the throttle body. So we come into the intercooler.
Lots of torque.
Yeah, we come into the intercooler, drop down, boom. And that allows me to test that radiator, that half radiator, see if it actually is enough to cool this car on the track, because I'm kind of curious. I know these are. And we can always switch to this later.
But when you really look at it, those really aren't that much bigger than they are, but they aren't.
Yeah, overall, you're talking about
you get
maybe 20% bigger, 25% bigger.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, everything helps, especially in Arizona.
Yeah. Well, we can try ducting that, just to make sure the air is either going through the intercooler or through the radiator and nothing else. So, I say we ditch this for this particular one and go with a normal throttle body and just see what we get.
We already have it set up for the half size.
Yeah,
tabs.
Yeah. I fabbed up the mounts and everything. When you know, yeah, it'd be a lot more fabrication to do it the other way. This will get us done quicker. So let's go ahead and do that. I think we'll take the center feed though, and there's a car that has a lot more front end room is the CRZ. So I think we'll move it over to the CRZ project. I'm only a little irritated, but I think in the end this will actually make it a little bit quicker. And luckily I made the lines so they could reach either place with the throttle body. So what's coming up next is we're going to go ahead and put the plate back on the bottom the way it should be to begin with. Throttle body on. We're going to mount our radiator, make a bracket for it. We lost the one from K20. And then start fabricating our tanks for the intercooler so we can both mount it and route all the cooling, all the intercooler lines. I'm still irritated about not using center feed, but that's okay. We got 3 monkeys on this coconut.
A couple supervisors.
I don't know if there'd be enough plumbing room because you could have the end tank and have your charge pipe come in like right about there. So your outlet could come out and around and go above it. So you got to have like a little jaunty angle, of course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That tube can come out and go in there.
Oh, yeah.
That tube can go right through the hood.
What hood? This turns sideways. Put the tank on the bottom, have the inlet on the bottom, and just come out the top right into the throttle body.
I'm doing the e-brake kits. Throttle body.
Here, throttle body, throttle body.
Here, throttle body. Oh my God.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
Not gonna work, but that's okay. I just wanted to see where that was.
So we're gonna have to change that. Oh, so we should probably come out at least right here. We'll make the tank and then we'll mount it to the throttle body and then we'll use that to determine where we mount it on the bottom. That's what I needed to know. If we build it that high, I can just come straight out and then we can do a coupler.
So were you going to make it square or were you going to do
No, I'm gonna make it like a triangular.
Taper to both. Yeah.
Top and bottom. I'll stay high because that way we can take our intake tube and come underneath it. Yeah. I'm gonna draw it up.
We're running all the stock stuff on this RDX turbo, so it's internally wastegated. So part of our thing was we had to make sure that would open and close, and it does. We went with the K-tuned swap radiator. It's pretty basic, goes right in. We have a slimline fan on there. We were gonna run our center mount throttle body, but decided not to, so we made a block off plate for right now that has our map sensor and intake air temps that will be mounted down under there, like that. I have a lower hose already for our radiator. It's a K-tuned hose. But we're gonna have to go with a custom hose up here, and as you can see, we worked a lot of different things into here. We decided to go with a half-core radiator and mount the intercooler on the other half, so from the front it looks like a sleeper, because it looks like you have an air conditioning condenser and a radiator down in there. Nobody will ever know. Brian designed these end tanks on the software, and we cut them out. And well, it was a collaboration. John from Full Race, Chris Sadowski from his shop, and Casey from Hasport helped weld all this together. And it's basically all just for packaging. Our hood clears ever so perfectly. This is notched down so our upper radiator hose will come through here ever so perfectly. And we put the lower tank is kind of off to the one side just for clearance, because we basically had to get around the shift mechanism. So we have just enough clearance right there. And so now we're still working on the actual cold air intake tube, and there we go. We have a wastegate or a blow-off valve now, so we can figure out where to put that in there. And our intake will come around through here and draw cold air from down there. Also had to modify this upper water housing, because this tube was coming out straight, and it just put the rubber hose right into our throttle body, but now there's just a perfect amount of space. Still have some heater lines to route, but I feel that we're gonna wait till we get our intake tube in there so we can tell exactly how and where we need to run those. That's all I have to say about that.
Another thing we had to do is build our own downpipe. So I bought this. This is kind of a do-it-yourself kit.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So essentially what we have is a flange we made, cut out stainless. It has to have room for like a ring that pops out in there. So this bolts on nicely to the back. It's 3-inch, so we should be able to get 3-inch pipe in there. We needed to make a tight turn, so we bought a 3-inch donut. We're gonna cut this at about 110 degrees probably, and that should bring it out and start it down, yeah, nice and snaky close. I got a piece of 3-inch U-bend stainless, and we also cut a bunch of flanges to bolt everything together as well. We'll need to make gaskets for it. I wonder if we can buy them. We should be able to buy them. And I also got a catalytic converter that supposedly is not carb legal, but OBD2 legal. Although I don't see a place for the O2 sensor. We might have to add that.
We could add that.
Yeah, we'll add that in there too. So I'll dig up a bung or two for that, so we can add those. So this should not cost us any horsepower and get us where we need to be for legality reasons, and it's going to require a little assembly. But you've done that before.
Yeah, some assembly.
Yeah, required. Some assembly required. Flex pipe. And something about flex pipe. A lot of the exhausts, they come out and they go all the way back, and the flex pipe is kind of far away. And I find that doesn't work very well, because what winds up happening is when you have a long exhaust, a little bit of engine movement means a lot of movement at the end of the... Exactly, it's like that.
It's chopping over here instead of right where it pivots.
So we're going to make it down as it goes past the intermediate shaft. We're going to put our pivot right there so that it's kind
of like at the rear motor mount.
Right, yeah, the rear motor mount where it actually is pivoting. The motor rocks off of the right and left mounts, and the rear mount kind of pulls it, but having it nice and close will mean only a little bit of flex, and that should help this last longer. Again, a lot of companies put it way far away, and these things break really quickly.
Yeah.
So,
especially if you have a bad motor mount.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Things just start moving too much.
And by the way, a good solution if you have are braking headers and stuff like that, or you can hear them hitting the bottom of your car, is get stiffer mounts. We're going to have moderately stiff mounts in this, and that should help out as well. All right. Cool.
Cool.
More stuff to do.
Let's assemble. It won't fit in between all this stuff. We'd have to cut that nub off of that. I cut that in half and cut 3 inches off of it.
Oh, that's sweet. Dang, I was hoping to get it up there.
Yeah, I know. Well, we could cut that off and try it.
That would be better. Well, the other option would be to go 2 straights and use the 90. But we'll just do it like this. And then we'll just put the cat right there. Basically, we have finished everything. We just have a few minor things to do. Put the rear tip on. We're gonna have to shorten the exhaust a little bit to do that. We have a different tip. Instead of the God's Snow or God's Now one, which is a crack up of a name. I think it's pretty much a ripoff of Godspeed, because what would be faster than fast would be now. Have it immediately. Yeah. So I think that's why they have God's Now. But anyway, instead of the God's Now muffler, we're going to use a Blocks muffler. I like the sound of those better. I also like the look of them about 100 times better. It's got a nice little turn down tip on it. But our exhaust is done. Let's kind of show you what we did here. We have supposedly an OBD2 legal cat. That's how it was labeled when it came from Amazon. The only thing it's missing is the secondary O2 sensor. So we don't really need to do that on this car because this is an OBD1 car. And to follow federal law, It just needs to have the OBD1 emissions. So I feel pretty good about the emissions we have on it. Let's drop her down, take a look at the top.
Have to put our O2 bung on there.
Our O2 what?
Bung. Bung.
What's in your hand?
It's a bung hole. Well, no, this is the bung. I need to make a hole for my bung.
Yeah.
It still needs a bung hole.
That's right. Well, it's got a hole in it.
I am the great Cornholio!
We have our exhaust. We just need to add the O2 sensor bung for it.
The battery tray.
Oh yeah, and still clear the battery tray.
Goes in, so
it'll be right there. Nice and close. It should light off quickly. All be good. This is going to be our intake. The tube's going to go down here, so we're going to get cold air down below. This
I have another piece, and then some modification at the bottom.
That'll sit like that, and we'll make a bracket for it to hold it in place. Put a nice big bell mouth on it and a blocks filter. For the upper radiator hose, we actually made one that used aluminum pipe to connect it over. Oh, you know what we do need to do? We need to do our...
we just got our blow-off valve.
Our blow-off valve. So we do need to add that. Gonna reroute the blow-off valve back into our intake air tube so it's emissions legal. And it should, I shouldn't say quotation, it should be literally emissions legal. We're probably going to make a bracket to hold the two pipes together and then another bracket to hold it on the engine so that it's nice and rigid. We're ready to basically wrap up the last two little things. Oh, we need to do our fuel sensor wiring and we need to do a boost reference.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Boost reference to our fuel pressure regulator, because when you have boost on a K-Series, you do boost reference the fuel pressure regulator. Next episode, we're going to fire this puppy up. I just got a little bit of wiring left to do, figure out where I'm going to put the two solenoid controls for the turbo, and then we're going to fire it up and get a dyno appointment. So this thing turned out really nice. You did a good job. You and Brian did a fantastic job with it.
I'm sure Brian thanks you too.
But it looks great. Like and subscribe. You know somebody that's interested in turbos, why don't you pass the information on to them. And we'll have more turbo information for you next time. Thank you very much for joining us.